Good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to the topic Teen Entrepreneurs. It's never too early to start a $1 million business. And I'm very glad to welcome both of you because you are 100% entrepreneurial. We had a phone call before. Ben, you're
This is terrifying. I don't know why I agreed to this. This is
Okay. Ben told me he might be a little bit nervous, but that's totally okay, Ben. I mean, actually, Nina said you're 17, you are only 16 years old, you're from Australia, you're right now located in New York, and Verena is just a little bit older. The founder of Fox and Sheep, you sold the company last year to HEUREKA, and you're still responsible for the business as itself. And at the same time, you started an initiative that's called Startup Teens, embracing teenagers to found companies. Actually, only active in Germany, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. So, both of you, really great to have you here. And the point is, my first question would be to the audience: who of you, and I think there are not so many, who of you is a teenager? Oh.
yeah.
So, still raise your hand. I want to count. It's like 2. I'm not very good with numbers. It's like
7.
more than 10. No?
Yeah.
Or more than 2 arms? I don't know. So this might be very interesting for you. Who is in his 20s?
In what?
In his
20s. In the 20s. And who is older than 30? Well, I'm
You're
30.
old.
Or is that older? Well, okay. So thank you very much. Okay. So I mean, Ben, you have been in the media quite a lot. Because of that, we are very glad to have you here today. There was written like you're already a millionaire, but actually the truth is you just started an app that's called Flogg. It's like a second-hand buying or selling app, and you raised a 7-digit amount. Tell us a little bit more about Flogg, the idea, and what exactly you did in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in technology forever. Like, literally, I can't remember when I started. When I was 14, I launched a game called Impossible Rush that went on to become the #1 trending app worldwide. We were in front of like Twitter, Vine, Tinder, and a couple other apps. But I was never really into gaming, and I wanted to do something bigger, like social networking. And I was constantly, looking for inspiration. But after my first app went viral, I got invited by like Facebook, Apple, Yahoo, and like a couple other big tech companies to like tour their headquarters and potentially do an internship. So I went to San Francisco in January 2015. And along the way, I met a guy named Chris Smith. And he is a filmmaker, and he also, runs a startup called Rex that has raised like millions of dollars. And he was like, some of your work is like better than what most adults are doing. Like, I don't know why you're in school. You should like drop out, move to New York City, raise funding, and get like really into something. And yeah, he's like, I'll mentor you. Like, you can sleep on my couch, like whatever you need. And I was like, okay, dude. And then I didn't really hear from him for a couple days, but eventually he's like, come on, let's do this. Like, you should meet this investor, Jonathan Teo. He was like one of the first investors in like Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram. And I was like, what? Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram? Like, that's crazy. So I met this guy the next morning, and he like blew my mind. He was like one of the smartest tech people I've ever met. And he told me stories about like early days of Snapchat and all that. I went back to Sydney and eventually was, kind of like looking for inspiration. I was like constantly speaking to Chris, my mentor. My phone used to get like confiscated in class because I was like always talking to Chris.
In class.
Yeah. And then eventually, yeah, I found like this idea. I basically was finding that like my friends were creating these Facebook groups, adding their friends to it, and then over time their friends would add their friends, and then they'd have these really tight groups they'd buy and sell in, basically because teenagers don't want to buy and sell to older people like 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds. They want to buy and sell with people they can trust. And there's also like relevancy where teenagers don't want to like buy some dude's random couch. They want to buy like stuff they're actually interested in, like sneakers, Yeezys, clothing, iPhones, whatever it might be. But yeah, I figured like Facebook was a really bad option to it. It wasn't like seamless. It was like, you have to add a friend before you could message a seller or buyer. And overall, it's just really messy. So I set out Flogg to be a place to buy and sell with your friends and their friends, particularly targeting teens.
Yeah.
And yeah, eventually I went back to San Francisco in June last year. I pitched like my idea, my vision to like a couple investors. And eventually, my parents were like, will like let you drop out if you like can close serious funding. Yeah, I don't think they thought I'd do it, but it's okay, I did it. And eventually, yeah, Binary Capital led our round, and Greylock Partners came in, John Maloney, like the former president of Tumblr, Paul Bacolt from Greycroft Partners, and yeah, then I went back to Sydney, dropped out, moved to New York City, and we launched like 8 weeks ago.
Okay, so thank you for that long story. I didn't want to interrupt you. First point from my side is, what is more terrifying, your first VC pitch or now being on stage?
Definitely being on stage.
Okay, got that. But before, I mean, you told us you had these games, these two apps you actually hacked, but you told me also you had some experiments before with your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Well, how old were you? 11, 12 years old?
Yeah. When I was like 10 years old, I basically found out like the latest Apple products would come out 12 hours early in Australia just because of the time zone difference. And this was like, before Apple would give like early previews to the press. So I'd get them like as quick as I can, make a video about it, and send it to all the tech media, like the press, like Mac Rumors, and like every time it would go viral. So by the time I was like, 11 or 12, I had like millions of views on YouTube. And that was kind of like the first time I experienced people like, consuming something I made.
Okay, I mean, to be honest, I think that's a crazy story, an amazing story. So Verena, I mean,
It's hard to beat, yeah?
Yeah, it's hard to beat. But actually, you have been also founding your first company when you were a teenager. But if you listen to this story, what do you think about it?
Well, my excuse is that there were no social media channels to that time, so it was pretty offline what I founded. It was a sushi restaurant.
And now you name it in Bielefeld.
Exactly, yeah. That makes it pretty crazy. And yeah, I guess it was a different time, but it's not much different than today. Today, it's also not that 19-year-olds or 16-year-olds all over Germany found their own companies, walk up to VCs, get funding, and drop out of school. I think there's not one single example from Germany. So I think it's US always, they dream bigger, and we in Germany tend to say, hold your horses. But I think it's the best thing that can happen that teenagers are up on stage and showing others in the room that it's possible.
Well, at the same time, I mean, concerning your background, you're from a very entrepreneurial family who actually also supported you a little bit in the beginning, not financially, but I mean, what is most important in Germany, I think, and because of that we are also doing this conference, is the mindset.
Absolutely.
Failing is okay. So your parents have supporting you 100% concerning the sushi restaurant on your career.
They wouldn't have been authentic if they'd said, don't take the risk. Because my childhood was like a roller coaster. Every time business went well, we went to the nicest hotels. Every time business didn't go well, we went to the North Sea. And so it was
what's against the North Sea?
Which is probably great too, but you could really see it in everyday life that entrepreneurship is not only about going to the sky, but also falling down to the ground. And I think if you're from a household like that, your parents will more push you to do it than stop you.
But did they force you? Were they like, Verena,
No.
you need to be an entrepreneur?
No, I think a little bit my father was afraid because he was like, why can't she like study something proper and why can't she have a red thread, as you say in Germany, a rote Faden in her CV? And I had everything but no rote Faden. And so I don't think they were like, yay, our daughter is an entrepreneur, but they weren't the ones to stop me either.
So I hope I have a roter Faden here in this panel discussion. So Ben, with you, I mean, we had a phone call, as I said before. And what about your parents? I mean, I imagine I have myself 2 children, maybe 3, in a little bit of time, and then my 16-year-old son would come up to me and say, Dad, I'm moving 16,000 kilometers far away and starting a company, and there are a couple of men who want me to sleep on their couch. I mean,
Yeah.
But I'm fine.
to be honest, it sounds a little bit weird. What did your parents say? I mean, you already said it, but were they supportive concerning your entrepreneurial career?
Yeah, so before my first app went viral, I was working on a project called One that didn't go so viral. And I was like totally into it, like it took up all my time, even during class I was working on it. And eventually I started failing all my exams, all my tests, and I went to like a selective school, so they kind of like kick you out if that happens. So my parents were like pretty stressed out about that. And they were also very like pro-college. They'd never imagine like having a high school dropout for a son. But over time, after that first app went viral, it got close to 2 million downloads. The press was really excited. I found like my parents and teachers were getting increasingly supportive, and I kept not proving them wrong, because obviously like they're supporting what I'm doing, but I kept like doing these crazy things and just being really passionate about it. And once it got to the point where I was getting like serious offers money-wise, they became more accepting. And then the whole New York thing was kind of like inevitable, like being in the US. And it wasn't like a quick process. It wasn't like Lada's mom, like I'm going to New York. It was like she came there for a couple weeks just to like settle me in.
Okay, but what was first? First was the funding, or first was the move to New York?
So I had like commitments, but there was no round closed. And then once I got to New York, like a couple weeks later, it shut.
Did your parents already visit you in New York?
No, I was like in New York. I was in San Francisco for like, that's when I was first pitching. Then I went back to Sydney to tell them like, hey, this is what I want to do.
Okay, and they were like, okay, you are so crazy, son, we cannot stop you. Let's do that. So, do you have siblings?
Yeah, I got 2.
Are they the same amount of entrepreneurial craziness like you?
Yeah, well, my sister's like 6 and my brother's like 13. So, I mean, we'll see. But right now, I mean, they're like any other kids.
They are just normal. Okay, got it. Okay, perfect. I mean, right now, I mean, you're focusing a lot on your career. I mean, it's amazing, and everybody is like thinking that it's a hell of a story. But at the same time, with 16 years old, I mean, I did something else than you did. I mean, I don't know. I played computer games. I ate sandwiches and stuff like that.
Crazy.
No, it's How I Met Your Mother. I think some people know that. But anyways. I mean, you're losing a little bit of your childhood and of a very good time. I mean, teenage years, especially in the end, are fun. What do you think about that?
I mean, like, I could pretend that, like, that doesn't bother me, but, like, for sure it does. But the fact is that, like, in 2 years, I'd be doing what I'm doing right now. So, I mean, I'm just cutting off a couple years. And also, like, on the weekends, I'm like any other teen. I do, like, what teens do.
What is that?
You're looking for
sandwiches.
something. No, I go to the mall, like, hang out with my friends, all that. But yeah, I mean, like, I just think I'm a normal teen. I just, like, really passionate about building stuff. And I think, like, one of my strengths is that I am a teen. Like, I'm building a product for teenagers, and who would know teenagers better than an actual teenager?
Okay, so, but in New York, you don't have, like, teenage 16, 17-year-old friends. You're only focusing on working, right?
Yeah, during the week. I have, like, teenage friends in New Jersey and, like, a girlfriend and all that.
Okay. Do you still have contact to your friends in Australia and Sydney?
Yeah, I mean, we still speak, like, a decent amount, but obviously, like, I'd be with them every day if I was in Sydney. And I went back to Sydney once, and, like, everything was normal.
And if a friend, I mean, obviously you explained your friends in Sydney that you're moving now 16 kilometers far away. What did you tell them? Did you say, well, dude, I mean, I just did that app, and then there was tons of money on my bank account, and now I'm moving to New York, or what did you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, it was like kind of in January after I met Chris, I was like, I'm going to move to New York, like, screw it, I'm going to get funding and move to New York, and I had like my mindset like that. So I started telling my friends, like even it was the last week of school, and it was like before I had any funding, I was like, I'm not coming back. And I remember I wrote myself a note in my locker that said, like, if you're reading this, you suck, because I would have come back. So I had that mindset, and over time I kept saying, like, I'm going to move to New York, I'm going to move to New York. And then when it actually happened, they were like really surprised, especially since I was like, getting really poor grades, and I was kind of like the class clown kid.
But actually, I mean, Verena, I mean, you're having this initiative about startup teens. Would you say it makes sense to put yourself as a teenager with 16 years old, putting so much pressure on yourself that having I don't know, a piece of paper in your locker, and at the same time you're telling all of your friends, I'm moving to New York, does it make sense for you?
Well, the German answer would be no, it doesn't make sense and don't go that way, but yeah, it does. I mean, if we were talking about the whole of the US and Germany putting like little notes into their lockers and moving to New York, I think we would have a different topic, but we need much more of these kind of pioneers. So I think it's fascinating. At the same time, I told that Ben when he said, what do you think is my biggest threat? I think it's a bit along the lines what you just said. Again, a German saying, like, man muss sich immer steigern können, you always have to reach the next mountain, and if you already climbed a pretty high mountain at the age of 16, it could be the Drew Barrymore kind of way that you, with 25, think, okay, what's next? What's next? But I think that's a German way of looking at it, because it's rather do little steps, don't do the big leap. And I think it's so cool to do a big leap. So I wouldn't stop you. I couldn't stop you. But I think it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I totally agree on the one hand, but on the other side, I mean, Drew Barrymore was not German, she was US American. I was just kidding. But at the same time, I mean, there's no security that someone who has so much success in a young age doesn't fall, I don't know, the mountain down, I don't know the right metaphor.
It's a normal way. It's a normal way. And I think the earlier you start, the easier it is, because you don't have to think about founding families, you don't have to think about financial security, you don't need a 6-room apartment to be happy. I mean, you're so basic in what you need when you're 16, 18, 22. It makes it so much easier to put everything aside and focus 100% on your startup.
Yeah.
So I would recommend anyone who thinks, I actually have an idea, I have the plan, to just go. It doesn't get better when you're old.
So, I mean, so your recommendation would be definitely, if you don't have anything to lose, do anything you want to, because be passionate.
But even if you have something to lose, because that would be the lame ass way. That would be, okay, I've tried to apply everywhere, nobody took me, okay, then I'll found a company. I would say, like, quit your amazing job and found a company. It's not like a lender of last resort kind of thing. It's something, as you say, which has so much passion, so much energy. And Startup Teams, because you're mentioning it, is a non-profit initiative to get exactly that going in Germany. That you kind of show 16, 17, 18-year-olds, this is also an option. And even if your parents are not entrepreneurs and they don't feel it the same way maybe my parents felt it, you can still go that way. So I would think it's always the best option, but I'm a founder, so I have to say that.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that, but 99% of the population might not agree on that. But concerning you, Ben, I mean, you've been called already a couple of times a Wunderkind, obviously. And we said, or we just talked about what could you lose and what could you not lose, etc., etc. In your opinion, right now, what is the biggest thing or the biggest aspect you could lose right now?
Just my childhood. I mean, apart from that, I've had a really good childhood, 15 years before I was living on my own and really dedicating my entire life to what I love. But Gary Vaynerchuk once said, he encourages students who are just finishing college to take the risk then and spend a couple years really doing what they love, just because that's the time they have no responsibilities, they don't have to think about family, so the age range of 24 to 30. And I think I just treat it like I'm getting an 8-year head start. Yeah.
Do you feel some kind of you have to do what you have to do, or what you're doing right now? Is it something like a gut feeling that it's all in your mind that tells you, that tells yourself some kind of this is your path, you have to go it, and whatever comes from the side, you have to go this path?
Yeah, I mean, I have a fire inside of me that just says keep going, and even when things are really shit, which that happens a lot, things go wrong in startups.
I've heard that, yeah. A couple of times, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I just have this fire in me that just says, keep going, and I've literally dedicated everything. I moved halfway across the world away from my family, friends, school, normal life, and I'm, living my own, dropped out of high school. I had to learn the most basic things like laundry and cleaning my apartment.
It's probably more difficult than running your startup.
Definitely,
Yeah.
I don't know how you people do it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. How does your apartment look? How many rooms does it
Messy.
have? Do you have furniture? I mean, that's a good question, because as we know, Steve Jobs didn't have furniture, for example.
Yeah, I mean, so when I first moved, I was obviously given a lot of money, so it's very easy to get comfortable. My walls are literally covered with motivational stuff, posters. I also write myself notes all around my apartment. I have a lamp, and I wrote all over it I think it's don't give up, don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. So yeah, everything to just keep me motivated, and it actually works. Sometimes things will go wrong, and I'll look up and see some motivational stuff.
That is crazy. That's just crazy. I mean, Verena, you have startup teens, and if you would listen to a story like that, there's a 16-year-old, not boy, a girl, and she tells you she's really into a startup idea and she sees a possibility, and she asks you, Verena, could you please speak to my parents about that? Would you do it?
Yes, I would. We have events where like the room is filled like this with 300 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds. And what they mainly say is, I'm happy to be here because my parents didn't really like me coming. And then you're like, why not? And they're like, yeah, because they fear I would drop out of school. I'm like, yeah, but it's more about getting the mindset than going next day back to school and say, I quit. So I think I would talk to parents wherever parents are who would like to talk to me about this, because it's not about, I mean, this is an extreme, yeah?
Obviously.
You won't have many kids like that in Germany who will go the same way tomorrow. It's more of parents letting them go into that direction and actually giving them the self-confidence of, yes, you can be 16 and still your idea is better as the idea of a 40-year-old. And I think we're lacking that mindset. We still think like as a corporate, you have to do a job for 10 years, then you can move up to the next step. You can't be younger than 28 to move up. 28 is the magic number. So I think, well...
I thought it would be 30.
That was just an example. But, but I think that's what we have to get out of our heads. You don't have to be a certain age to be allowed to do certain things.
But would you define a certain line where you say, okay, this startup teen I cannot support in front of their parents because this is what she or he wants to do, I don't do? Is there a fine line where we would say, oh, seriously, I would step back also from that?
I think only if the idea is not good enough. So
okay.
We often have we now have a business plan competition where 150 teenagers handed in their business plans, and when you read through them, you see every third is great that somebody took the chance to write their stuff and to do a video, but you would never recommend, okay, drop out of school tomorrow and start this is amazing. No, but it's still good you wrote it, because, I mean, many would just not write it at all.
Exactly.
But I think if the idea is not strong enough, I wouldn't be the one to say, okay, leave everything behind and move to Berlin. It's also a cool city. Yeah. But if an idea is really good, and there was one in this business plan competition where I would recommend exactly the same. Move out of your small village in Germany, come to Berlin, and we'll help you start up here.
And actually, you can drink alcohol way earlier in Berlin
legally,
than in New York. Just as
where it's at, I'm moving
just
here.
as a hint.
He says legally, so he drinks alcohol anyway.
Was not yesterday. So, but Verena, one more question, because actually you're telling now as a Verena of founder or starter of the startup teens, but would you say the same as a mother of 3 children?
Well, I have 3 boys, they're 4, 6, and 8, so I would say the same as Ben, that it's too young to tell. But I think they're either going to love it or hate it. My husband also runs a startup, so
exactly.
The chance of them going to Hawaii surfing is pretty high when they see us too, because they probably think, okay, why should I do the same? They're crazy. But on the other hand, if they stand in front of me with 15 and say, I have to move to New York, I would probably cry, as every mother cries, but I would take them there, I would find a nice apartment, and I would kind of feel that they are doing the right thing, and something maybe I wouldn't have dared at the time.
So you would be very, very proud of your children at the same time crying and wiping your tears?
Well, I'm proud anyway. But, I think if somebody stands in front of you like you, and you've been doing your first YouTube channel, I mean, which 11-year-old films Apple devices puts them on YouTube 12 hours ahead of New York?
And it's actually so smart that he knows that, I mean, Australia from the time zone based is way earlier than...
Other 11-year-olds don't even know that New York is a different continent.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. But one more point. I mean, you said before, and you too, concerning teenagers should build teenage products. Is this something that you would, if you are 20, would also change, building more for 20-year-old people, products?
For sure. I mean, I think there's like a lot of culture in Silicon Valley where like everyone's making products for teenagers and young people. And it kind of like blows my mind how like, you know, people who are like 30 or 40 think they like can just do this. They should be like hiring teenagers, and they don't need to be like crazy teenagers who are like designers or coders. They just need average teenagers so they can pick up the culture. And like $500 to like an average teenager, like, if I got $500 2 years ago, like that would be like the best day ever. So, I mean, like I think it's really like encouraging startups. Like there's no reason why, 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds can't make products for teenagers. But I think there's, a big part where teenagers should be hired at all these consumer-faced startups.
So in Germany, we already or always have the discussion what a person or what a role you're fulfilling in a certain company. So you have your COO, Mike, sitting over there. And he's your COO, you're the CEO of the company. What exactly is your role? What are your strengths in the company?
I mean, I'm a bit of everything. So it's like running the team, marketing the app, product, figuring out a growth plan, going back to investors to raise money. And I think like, all founding teams, everyone does a bit of everything. Sure, you have sometimes, people who like particularly focus on one thing, but I actually think it's a good idea if everyone does a bit of everything.
So I have some teammates in my company who are actually also way older than me. Some of you saw them upstairs on the presentation in the beginning and the start of today. How is it for you? I mean, working together with a 30-year-old, 30-ish guy. How is it? Is it strange? I mean, you talk to each other, you interviewed him a little bit. How is that?
Yeah, I mean, I really like don't consider my age as a factor. And I don't know why like people would think it matters. So I mean, we really just like we're all good and bad at things, and we just like try to help each other and like make Flogg the best product it can be. Yeah, and age isn't a factor for us.
Do you think so too? Age isn't a factor. I mean, if you're hiring people, do you look at the age, or do you only look in the personality and experience?
Well, sometimes if I read somebody is like born in 1996, I'm like, whoa, that was when I did Abitur. So it obviously you think about it, but on the other hand, you feel you don't get older yourself. So I mean, 37 is pretty old, right? But I don't go through my company, and we have lots of 24, 25, 26-year-olds and think I'm old. I think it's as Ben says, everyone gives their contribution, and sometimes experience matters, sometimes just a feeling for the product matters. So I think the mix is what is important. And here Daniel and Torben are here. We met them via Startup Teens, and they are 17 and also founded their own business. And what I always told them is do a product for your target group. Don't try and think like a 40-year-old. There are enough 40-year-olds thinking.
But you did apps for kids.
I do apps for 3-year-olds, so I say you won't find any 3-year-olds that will do it. So I took a target group which is not able to do it themselves.
Okay, fine. And actually you were doing it also for the parents because they have to pay
Absolutely.
and download it. So
and they are my age, so everything's good.
So that's fine. Okay, got it. So with 19 years old, when you founded your sushi restaurant in Bielefeld, did you already know what has been your strength? Because Ben said, well, I'm more or less an all-rounder. What have you said?
I knew my strength was getting things done. So you can give me basically anything and say you have 12 hours and then it's done. And so I felt like I was quicker in getting things done and actually doing rather than thinking. Occasionally I think, but I think that was something where just, as you say, there's a fire within you. I think I felt the same. There was a constant reinventing myself, next idea, next startup, next topic. And so I didn't exactly know my strength. I just knew I wanted to rather do things and feel like this is the achievement of the day rather than sit somewhere and not have the feeling whether it actually mattered I was there.
So it's like getting things done. And would you say it stayed the same until now, like 19 years, 18 years more? Okay.
Absolutely. I think some people are focused on one thing, and I can juggle 12 things at the same time without kind of letting the balls fall down.
Maybe that's also a female thing. I don't know.
Maybe,
I'm not quite sure about that. But let's be honest. I mean, right now you're 16 years old, but I would like to ask you, do you have any advice to the teenagers right now in the audience to found a company? What is the most important aspect in your opinion?
Don't listen to anyone. I mean, I feel like...
Don't listen to any woman? No.
Anyone.
Okay, so sorry. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, and I feel like, everyone's programmed in a way, you have to go to college so you can go work for someone. And I remember I used to sit in business studies, and for one thing we had to write, fill out a job interview. And it's so weird to me. It's why wouldn't we encourage students to actually start a company and start their own thing instead of having the idea of going to work for someone else. So I think it's just really don't give up. There's people who want to back you. Teenagers also don't have that that sometimes not having a lot of experience is a good thing, because once you have a lot of experience, you're a lot more like, you assume things could go wrong. And I think, when you don't, you're just going to assume everything goes right. You're really like passionate, nothing's going to stop you. So really, just don't give up, and eventually you're going to be successful.
And what would be your advice? I mean, obviously, join startup teams.
Well,
that's the
no,
first advice, maybe.
well, yeah, but that's
at least in Germany.
Yeah.
What would be your advice?
I think it's a strategic advantage of being young and founding a company. Ben is the best example. Yeah, in Berlin every week, I don't know, you know it better, how many startups are founded every week. It's pretty difficult for them to get a share of voice. But if you're a 17, 18-year-old and you come up with a great idea, the chance of you being seen and being brought to the light is much higher. So I would just say start young. There's a lot less doubts. And there's a lot less finger pointing. Nobody will point at Ben if he fails in a year and say like, that was for sure.
Gründerszene will do.
Gründerszene will do, but no one really will. But if you are 35 and you've left like a really cool job, people are much more likely to judge. So I would say it's a perfect time when nobody really takes you serious yet. You can just exceed the expectations all the time.
Okay, so to summarize it, your advice is more or less don't listen to anyone. Your advice is there's nothing too early or something like that.
Start as young as you can.
So before I'm giving up to the audience for some questions, my last question would be, let's bet, where is Ben in 10 years? You have to answer and you have to answer. I know it's a lovely question. And and in 10 years we will meet again at the HEUREKA Conference. And I'm 40 years old, god damn it. So what is your answer?
Well, we can at least say we knew him.
Yeah, we knew him. And actually, it is your first time on stage. Very cool, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Flogg's going to become an app as big as, like, Tinder or Instagram, and all teenagers will use it. Then I'll be on to the next thing in 10 years. 10 years, I'll be, creating the next Apple, I hope.
You agree, 100%.
Well, yeah, I'll just be the same. That would be good news.
That would be the same. Okay, thank you very much to both of you. And as I said, are there any questions from the audience to Ben or Verena? Over there?
Hey, shout out to you for rocking the Yeezy, by the way.
Yeah.
But, aside of that, like I have an actual serious question. So right now, Flogg only works on a cash basis, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if your target group all of a sudden becomes more mature, and as they start growing and starting using the product more frequently, will you then also like take into account to actually embed payments in there and use credit cards or whatever? Or what's your plan on this?
Yeah. So right now we're targeting a really young demographic. It's like literally 14 to 16-year-olds. And a lot of 14, 16-year-olds don't have credit cards or debit cards. That's why we stuck to the, cash base only right now. And we also find like a lot of students are like trading in school, like in high school, so that also becomes unnecessary. But definitely, over the next couple months, I definitely think we'll be, integrating other payment options.
Okay, you have to know he is a founder of a Berlin startup that has a payment solution.
Yeah, cookies. Yeah, I saw it last
By
night.
coincidence. Yeah.
Any more questions from the audience to Ben or Verena? If not, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Verena, for having you on stage. And see you in 10 years again. Best of luck to your startup.